It's Atlanta week. I'm going to go live on Instagram over here too. Welcome into Flyover Footy, everybody. There we go. It's going to be a fun night. We've got a lot going. It's not just going to be me. Don't worry if you just tuned in. I've got Phil coming. I've got Santi coming. Settle in. It's going to be a fun night. This is why I like recording on Thursdays. There's always something that comes in. Always something happens. Last minute, late, news, rumors becoming news. Feels like it's been a literal month in like 5 or 6 days. It feels no different than what it was like 2 days ago when AZ and Dewar left. And I get Carnell saying Sam's on the trading block. Oh boy. But we got a new DP coming. If you want some positivity about St. Louis City, this is probably your best bet because we're in a bad place. 7 games winless, but hope is on the horizon. Reinforcements on the way. And I'm probably going to be saying this throughout, but it could be a lot worse. And we have, I think, a decently favorable matchup, Phil, this week. So
it's true.
I'm riffing on the fact that
no, it's perfect because I think everyone's really down on St. Louis and they're like, a lot of people are being like, well, we don't have the depth. Our best players are hurt or whatever, that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, look at Atlanta. They spend a hell of a lot of money and they're doing so badly. So like, would you rather spend a lot of money and do badly, or would you rather be us just injured and not spending much money?
I mean, so here's the thing about Atlanta. Like right now, Atlanta may be in a worse off position than St. Louis when it comes to personnel available to them. But it's because almost kind of the opposite. It's because they have such a good team.
That's fair.
And we have 2 major international competitions going on right now. Like they're missing, I think 4. They're missing 4 players to international duty, I think. 3 or 4. 3 players international duty. They just sold their best goal scorer. And we lucked out in Thiago Almada is suspended for yellow card accumulations. I don't know how you could time it that well. It's like everything that we're going through, 7 games winless, and you could see the layers of positivity peel off of Carnell, like press conference by press conference, to the point of I'm going to have to use that phrase on the pod. You can see the layers of positivity peeling off.
It's well said.
And, Lutz isn't happy. Like, there's...
How mad can he be, though,
I'm actually, I don't know if impressed is the right word, but in the concept of, like, it seemed like ownership didn't want to spend on a DP at some point in the past 5 to 6 months. Like after Nico, that quote of Lutz's, "We're not looking to sign a designated player," rings in my head over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Nico replacement, like they didn't with Cedric Teukert, but now they are. So what does that tell you about how pissed, how not happy, how frustrated Lutz is? And he was able to talk ownership into digging into the pockets and spending some serious cash, whatever it ends up being. Like we know Columbus had a $1.5 million deal in the works. Wouldn't surprise me if it was more than that, just because there's that French Champions League team also in the hunt for Hartel. I don't know. If it wasn't for the Hartel news, I would not have near as optimistic of an outlook as you're probably going to hear tonight. And it's going to get realistic. Like I'm not going to, this isn't going to last the entire pod once we start talking about Colorado. That's for sure. I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
Santiago.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
What's up, man?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we're ready. You guys want to get going? Oh,
let's do it.
Hopefully my tea isn't making too much noise. Can you hear like a weird noise in the background? You're gonna
little
you're gonna
bit.
oh, like a little
Yeah.
ah, darn it. Okay.
I only say it because I don't want you re-listening to the pod tomorrow and being like, "Oh man, I can't believe I'm looking out for future Phil."
It's gonna be my excuse for whatever mistake I make today. I'm gonna be like, if I had tea, I would have been okay.
There you go.
Cool. I'm gonna hit record, and hopefully this computer works like it's supposed to. We'll go. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the big 550 KTRS. We are presented by Noble Ice Vineyards. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have my soccer friends here today, minus Stu, who is in South America, enjoying himself in Peru currently, representing St. Louis. He ran into a St. Louis FC sticker at a bus stop today, I think. Props to him. I'm glad we're getting some pictures and able to witness the good time he's having because things are rough here in St. Louis. Let's not sugarcoat it here on the big 550 KTRS. We're going to come at you real today. But of course, we're going to sprinkle in some hope for the future as we always do. And who's better than that, than Matt Baker, right?
I try, Phil.
What's up, Matt?
I always try to keep it real while giving a realistic dose of positivity. And I think this is a perfect night for that. A midweek match that went about as horribly as you can imagine, with trade news throughout the week, with incoming transfer news. By the time you're listening to this on your pods, you're probably going to have an announcement made that we're going to get into. And then you have a match this weekend. So there's a lot of every single type of emotion I think possible that you were feeling right now.
Absolutely. And Santiago, I was going to try to throw you under the bus somehow with how negative you are, or some other lie.
Oh, I got it. Santi got a glimpse on Wednesday of a Tim Parker-less City.
Oh, true. He got what he wanted, didn't he?
God.
No. Of course not. Santiago, how are you, man?
Don't get it started with Tim Parker. One day I'm gonna go interview him, and he's gonna say, "Oh, so you're the guy who wants to kick me out?" And I'm gonna say, "No, just talk to Matt Baker and Phil Grooms. They started those rumors. You can go back and listen to that pod. I was just stating some facts." But anyway, doing great. It's been a long day, busy day. But man, a little disappointed with last night's performance.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about that very shortly. And I was talking to Matt about, I think, some of the things we purposefully try to be for St. Louis is level-headed. And so I don't think you'll catch us being too crazy one way or the other. I do hope you get a balanced show today, even though some things are down. And we're going to start with the bad, but there's so much good to be heard today. So stick with us, everyone. Let's start with the recap of Colorado. Of course, let's start with the starting 11, Matt.
Oh, yeah. It all starts with the starting 11, and this one threw us for a loop. Before this game, there was not a single person who was confident in what this was, though I think I did get close in the five in the back. Roman Berkey, Thomas Totland, Jake Nerwinski, Josh Yarrow, Anthony Marcanic, and Akil Watts made up the goalie and the back line. Chris Durkin, Jabulu Blom, and Eddie Leuven made up a three-man midfield, and Jose Kojima and Klaus were a two-striker combo. Call it a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, whatever you want. We had three center backs, and it was Anthony Marcanic, Josh Yarrow, and Jake Nerwinski left to right. It was shocking to me that Carnell went this route, though we had our depth tested to hereto unforeseen level. The fact that we are towing the line currently between what MLS calls hardship roster availability is a testament to just how dire things are in a certain sense between injuries, transfers, and looming transfers. We ran out a strong base of a midfield that included Akil Watts, one of our fullback slash midfielders, playing a left wing back. Thomas Totland was a right wing back, and Jose Kojima continued to move up even further into the attack where he had played before with City 2. This had the potential to be interesting. And I think I harken back to a few weeks ago, guys, when we posited during the losing or winless streak, rather, that we might just look at, I think it was against Miami, where we might just see three center backs, five in the back. And personnel wise, we were pretty close here, but formation wise, Carnell really did it. He went for it. And I was personally not that impressed.
Yeah, and we had a good time trying to figure out our starting 11 this week, and I think we settled very quickly with what we thought would be a conservative starting 11 that would be most like, not much of a departure from what they've done in the past. But Santiago, when we were putting out our crazy 11s, right? I think Matt and I went a little more simple, but you put a an 11 together that was like, let's just take all of the best players we have and get them on the field somehow. And it was a little bit weird looking, but it wasn't that much weirder, if at all, weirder than what Carnell ended up doing, right?
I know, and you guys were giving me a hard time because my lineup had all but one of our center midfielders, and then all of them ended up being on the field. But yeah, when I saw the line, I was like, wow, three in the back, wing backs. This is a formation we have talked about before. And obviously it happened more out of necessity, but I was excited about seeing it and see what it could do. Like I like what I saw. Still a lot of space for Colorado uh, in the transition, but then I think things fell apart quickly with that goal that Colorado scored on that throw in.
Matt, what were some of your takeaways from this game? We'll do just a little bit of takeaways of this Colorado game before we move on.
Yeah, the first thing is that we played a team that had a very similar style to us. The Chris Armas-led team pressed. They had a similar line of defensive action. So if you look at where the average uh, position on the field of the height of the defensive actions, it was very similar, about 40 meters for each team in the defensive third. So the pressing wasn't really there that we want to, as we usually do. This was a back and forth match, and I think Colorado bested us in transition quite well. I never really felt like we connected our lines very well together. Klaus tried to dribble through a lot of defense on our attacking end and never really found much of a rhythm. But that leads to some of the effectiveness that Klaus had overall. And if you look at some of the stats, goals added is a popular one that Santi and I have started talking about because the account on X, MLS Stat, is now tracking that very well. And Klaus had the worst goals added of our entire team. And I looked into that a little bit more this morning and why that might be. And so it led to the specifics of what issues I had with Klaus in this game. I felt that he's doing well in receiving long balls. I think Klaus, as a target striker in that regard, he receives from a very deep position. And so he adds a lot of value in where he receives the ball. He does receive the ball well. He passes a little more deep. So he's losing goals added, scoring in his passing, but also he's losing a lot in his dribble. He has negative goals added over the season on his dribble. And I just don't think that Klaus is comfortable enough to possess the ball, to have the ball and control the ball for periods of time and try to make things happen. I would much prefer to see those around him be able to receive the ball and then play it back to Klaus in a dangerous position, or work the ball around and Klaus then uses his speed to break lines because he's sneaky fast. And we haven't been seeing any of that. And I felt that this was just a microcosm of that game. Bradley Carnell said post game, or he said Thursday rather, that this game was a microcosm of the past five. And I agree with that in so many different ways, individually and holistically. I do think that there was some significant positivity around guys like Chris Durkin, Edu Leuven. I think Jose Kajima even had a pretty good game overall. But for me, it all comes down to the Edu Leuven PK. I think the first goal that we allowed was horribly frustrating. A throw in that just bounced over everybody. Josh Yarrow missed a header to clear it. And then Jake Nerwinski read the room wrong. He backed away off the ball. So he read the play wrong. Rowan Berkey thought somebody was doing something else. The communication wasn't there. Players didn't have effectiveness. And so Georgi Mihailovic just ran out of nowhere and scored the goal. It was embarrassing to an extent in how lackadaisical it looked because things were misread so badly. And then it could have changed everything with the Edu Leuven PK. These are the moments that we talk about all of the time, in that this St. Louis City team doesn't consistently create high quality chances and in the attacking third in the penalty box, but they have their moments, and they're significant moments that they're not able to take advantage of. And this was a PK. It's the second time this has happened this season where we've had a PK that can change the entire dynamic of a game early on. And it's the second time we've missed. I don't understand what is happening other than it's a confidence issue. Call it the yips, call it whatever you want. This team has a psychological type of an issue going on right now that The dam doesn't just need to break. It's this mental block that started to develop now when you're going so long. Now, 3 games without goals. We're up to 319 minutes without a St. Louis City player scoring at all. The last time St. Louis City had a goal, it was Luis Suarez scoring an own goal during Miami. The last time St. Louis City players scored a goal, it was Indiana Vassilev at 41 minutes of the Inter Miami game. That's where we are right now. How long ago was that? And so this team is now carrying that weight on and on and on. And we've talked about the strikers mentality before in the past year and a half and how that affects a single player. This is permeating through the entire team. They need somebody to step up. They need a magical moment to happen that they can build off of. And we didn't see any of that last night. And the PK was kind of the precursor to that because I didn't see any huge game-breaking possible chance after that really stands out once that opportunity slipped away.
Just a couple of many, polarizing comments there between last year and this year. It just feels like, there's a lot of snake bitten feeling about this year, where last year everything went our way, right? It felt like every lucky chance we could get was going in. At the time, we didn't call it lucky. Who knows at this point, whether it was luck or it was work. That's a good conversation to have about this entire situation. But that PK, last year, it feels like that would have been going in, no problem. And this year it just didn't, right? And we're looking at Klaus having to play make a lot and not just finishing balls off. And him, when he gets his chances, not doing it, whereas last year they were going in. So, there's a lot of that going around. And I think we're all looking for causes. I think some people are looking for blame on that. Is there anything else, Santiago, that really spoke to you in this game about how the game flow went, about how St. Louis looks this year versus last year, or just in general?
Yeah, me, this year is starting to look what last year should have been. And obviously, last year was so successful, so there is a lot of expectation, and now fans are frustrated. But when I look at it, I was like, maybe this is what 2023 was supposed to be. Team like mid-table. Well, right now we're kind of bottom of the table, but a team that will be competitive and get some points, and maybe towards the end sneak into the playoffs. But last year was, I think, an anomaly, and as you said, like everything was going City's way this year, not getting any of those lucky breaks, and yeah, it's just no luck on the PKs, and to me it was just devastating. It would have been great to see Edu Leuven scoring at City Park after all the issues he had earlier in the season, but just it wasn't on the cards. And Matt made a comment about Klaus, and yeah, I think yeah, he wants to get the ball and be a playmaker, but I think since he's doing that, he's also not in the box at times where we have a cross or an option to to make a pass to the box. So something needs to change there. Yeah, I know it's one of those things, like he wants to do it himself, and maybe he's also frustrating because at times he's not getting service, but that's not his role. So something to look at.
Yeah, it speaks, Phil, to one of the needs that we have on the team that we're going to get to, I think.
It does, but it also, in my opinion, speaks to what he's being asked to do. I think there are holes in this game, in this team, and if you have a player that's good at finishing, but is probably also your best playmaker because he's doing well at playmaking, when he's in that role, you choose playmaking often, and you hope that the other players are going to step up and be able to finish, because Carnell is getting chances, right? That the XG isn't looking terrible. Now, we may be not happy with the quality of those chances, but there are stats being put up that don't necessarily lead to how many times this team is lost. And so, if you have a choice with Klaus being the best playmaker and having to do that or pull double duty, a lot of people are kind of claiming based on stats. I understand why he's chosen what he's chosen, but I hope it gets thrown in the trash as we get closer and closer to that July 18th date and on as these new players acclimate. And I just want to say one thing, I don't think it's going to be a ranty show, but I do think there's like one thing I'll take away that is a negative here. And it's just like, if if we do have a bunch of players out, if we're not going to be able to be flashy in our style, if we're going to grind out a win, um, I just feel like we should look like a team that's trying to grind out a win. I just will never stop thinking about that San Jose game where we won away with a team that was like all backups. Designated team was shining in that moment. Our depth in a way was shining in that moment. Our desire to win was shining in that moment. And it is such an armchair quarterback thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, that it just didn't look like we had team hungry out there on Saturday night or on Wednesday night. So last night. So, that's what I want to see. And even if that means that if one of our best players isn't hungry enough to start, like I'd rather he doesn't. And so that's the harshest thing I think I'll say today is I hope there's something changes in that regard for Saturday, even though, gosh, it's a fast turnaround. But, we got a lot of kids who are hungry and want to play. I think we got a lot of players that haven't been getting minutes that are excited to play. And so I'd like to see 11 players looking like that in the next game. Any other thoughts, guys, before we move on?
I'll just throw my stat of the night tonight right now is that this isn't a one single game for Colorado. This is an accumulation of everything. And I think we've all reached a frustrating boiling point. And last year, the story that Santi was alluding to is that St. Louis was overperforming not just their goals, but just about every attacking metric. And expected goals is the one that everybody points to that we overperformed by. I think Matt Doyle had it on Extra Time this week. That was like 20 goals. That we overperformed to our expected goals. This year, we have underperformed by over 6 goals. So our expected goals is similar to what it was last year, and we've scored 6 less goals than our XG. And that's a direct indicator of everything that has led to this point. Klaus most notably, but other players too who have not been able to finish. And it seems like we took 2 steps back against Colorado in not just an inability to finish, but an inability to progress the ball into a possible point where we could then get it to that final shot to finish. And I don't expect to see this starting formation again against Atlanta, but I didn't see enough of it that makes me confident to say that I would like a 3 center back look going forward. And that might be personnel. Like, let's be honest, Anthony Marcanic as our left center back, Jake Nerwinski as our right center back. And Akil Watts left wing back. The positioning was pretty flawed, especially on the left side if you're running a true 3 center back look. And so there's an opportunity with the right personnel, but I don't think we're going to get much better as far as personnel goes anytime soon.
It just didn't look natural, did it? It feels like in most games, even though the goals aren't there, it feels like that underperforming 6 goals is real when we play the way that we're used to, because it's clear that St. Louis knows how to play. They know where everybody's going on the pitch, even some of the subs, right? But, last night it felt like, boy, nothing was easy. Nothing was natural. So I was voting for the get all the best players on the field choice. So I don't blame him for trying it. Now we know what that looks like, and maybe we'll see something more conservative next time. Anything from you, Santi, before we move on?
No. Let's talk Atlanta. I think we talked enough, and it's just there's a lot of frustration, but now this Atlanta game, basically, it's one of those do or die.
Absolutely. We're Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you for joining us as we pivot to other news, other talk. Matt, we've got a lot of player updates, maybe the most ever, and I really want to spend some time on this one.
Boy, did I stress doing our midweek pod this week, trying to get all this in a timely manner. But let's run through it rapid fire because it's noted news, but it's important to carry into Atlanta. We know that Tomas Ostrak and Celia Pompey are out for the season with ankle injuries. We still are without Rasmus Alm with an MCL sprain. We're without Joachim Nilsson with his hamstring. Kyle Hebert, as we're recording this, is currently facing Argentina with Canada. AZ Jackson earlier this season has been transferred to Columbus for $650,000 in GAM, with add-ons potentially reaching up to $900,000 in GAM. AZ is not available to play for Columbus until July 18th, but he has left, no longer available for City. Nicholas Dewar has been transferred to Danish Superliga side Randers FC for a reported $400,000 in transfer fee money. That is similar to the reported price that we brought him in for. So as Manuel Veth reported, it's about a wash in the transfer fee. Sam Adeniran is no longer going to be available for St. Louis City. That's safe to say at this point. He, per Bradley Carnell post game of Colorado, is in current transfer and trade talks. So we have likely seen the last of Sam Adeniran in a St. Louis City kit. Tim Parker will return from his yellow card suspension to be available going into the Atlanta United game. Also available going into Atlanta United are the players who were on short-term loans against Colorado. Per MLS roster rules, short-term loans are valid for 4 days. This includes Brendan McSorley, who has used up one of his 2 allowed appearances in MLS League play. It includes Michael Wenzel, and it includes Tyson Pierce, both of whom still have 2 games available to appear in MLS matches this year. Johnny Klein has used up both of his appearances. He is no longer eligible to appear for St. Louis City via a short-term loan. However, it is noteworthy that MLS roster rules also allow for a MLS Next Pro player who is domestic to be promoted up to the first team and receive a first team contract and appear starting outside of the transfer window. LAFC did this with, I think the guy's name was Luis Muller in May. And it is possible Johnny Klein or otherwise could sign a first team contract and appear immediately for St. Louis City. There's news also, if we want to discuss that now. I know we're going to dig into this in the wind down as well, but there's some positive news on the horizon. As far as the news goes affecting this week for Atlanta United, I think that about sums it up. And it leads to St. Louis having about 19 or so players available on their roster unless they have an additional call up from City 2. City chose to go with 19 players as opposed to rostering Sam Adeniran against Colorado, if that tells you anything, in addition to what Carnell said about him.
Santiago, say something here before I do.
I don't know what you want me to say, but I like what we found out today, Matt, about the possibility of being able to sign John Klein or a player from City 2, because, yeah, it was disappointing last night when I saw John Klein coming in towards the end of the game, when basically at that point the game was already 2-0, and I was like, well, why would you use his second appearance instead of waiting until Saturday when you may need fresh legs and he may have a better chance to play and have significant minutes? But now it makes a little bit more sense. I still don't like that rule that you can only appear in 2 games, and I get it. MLS maybe wants to control that and make sure teams don't abuse, but at the same time, just be more flexible. Maybe make it maybe 4 games, 5 games, because and where I'm coming from is, if I'm thinking about giving one of these players a chance and I'm thinking about signing them, having a good look at them at real MLS games, by having more games, will give you a better chance to make your decision. But just making your decision based on what they do with the second team and the few minutes you're able to give them in MLS games, to me, it doesn't make sense. But I'm glad he could be signed. But still, it goes back to what I was saying. He appeared in 2 games, only a few minutes, so the team didn't really get a good look at him. And obviously, out of necessity, you may need to sign him to have enough players. But just I don't know. I would like the rules to be more flexible, even in these weeks where you have 3 games in 8 days. Maybe one loan for that period, instead of having to loan a player twice, once for Saturday and then another time for the Wednesday Saturday games.
I think you have merit in what you're saying, because the frustration in seeing Johnny Klein use up his second short-term loan and knowing he's done in that mechanism. We had Caden Glover on the bench. Caden Glover's a homegrown player who is already on the City roster. If you were worried about Johnny Klein not being available and you wanted to use him in the future, and this was what you chose to do, I don't understand why you would do it. That just lends more credence to the fact that I think Johnny Klein might be about to receive a first team contract, and it could be as an injury replacement for Celio Pompeu. Celio Pompeu is a domestic player for St. Louis. He has a replacement that you can sign up to his salary because he's on the season-ending injury list. It's not going to take up an additional roster slot this year. So St. Louis, take full advantage of these mechanisms you can to get the bodies up for players who have earned it from City 2. Because if any player who's earned it from City 2 so far this year, it's Johnny Klein.
Yep. And there are other City 2 players, or sorry, MLS Next Pro players that have done what he's done and been successful in MLS. It does take time. You got to give them minutes. But, as both of you are kind of pointing out here, what better time to give Johnny Klein minutes, to take advantage of that mechanism, that transfer mechanism, than now when we're absolutely short on players. This is why you build up the academy. One of the many reasons why you build up the academy and the City 2 program. They're ready to go, right? And it may take time. It may not be the best player on your roster when you're desperate for wins, but if you have nothing else to do, you do it. And so I would be very disappointed if Klein didn't get signed full time, because there were a couple moments last night that he was a part of some really lovely play in and around the box. Around 80 and 85 minute was my favorite one. So I think he should stay. I got to say, Jerry Hayes in the chat did mention Klein's small stature. He looked very tiny last night, side by side with MLS veterans. He says, that said, at the end of the game, if you looked at Colorado's 2 central midfielders, they were like the same height as him. So that made me feel a little bit better
Cole
about
Bassett's
that.
pretty small.
Yeah, that too. But I'm with you, Santiago. Give them 6 loans and 2, Leagues Cup, Open Cup loans next year. And if you're a team like St. Louis, where you have a small spending, you're relying on the academy, you fight like nails to make sure every time the salary cap gets raised in any weird way for someone like Miami, there's something built in for the lower teams as well. I mean, if you want a competitive league, that's just something that makes sense. So I just wanted to fit that in there. And I think we should just move on from there. We have the new signing is like a big thing, right?
Yeah, I want to spend enough time with Atlanta, so let's tease this one a little bit. If you're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, tune into our podcast version where we're going to go a little deeper on Marcel Hartel, the central attacking midfielder number 10 from FC St. Pauli, who in the 2 Bundesliga helping his team get promoted. We have as official confirmation as we're going to get until the team announces it that he will be St. Louis City's new designated player coming to St. Louis on a free transfer from the 2 Bundesliga team, FC St. Pauli, and providing that support that we need, not available until the summer transfer window opens in July. I'm excited about this. This is the real deal. We're hearing massive positive thoughts, positivity, compliments from those who cover the 2 Bundesliga, from those who cover European soccer, Germany. This is the big deal. This is the absolute thing that could be the game changer. Whether you say it's too late or not for this season, we'll see, but it's not going to be just a half a year contract. Marcel Hartel is going to be a stud for St. Louis City.
Someone that has been wanted by Lutz in the past, so that's something I look forward to. The profile fits what all the other clubs wanting him, makes sense as well. It just feels like a Leuven size deal to me. Do you guys agree with that? Maybe even bigger?
Bigger.
I think bigger. My only concern is that where the team is right now and being short on players, he will come when the transfer window take place July 18, but will it be too late at that point? And I know the team, and Bradley Carnell talked about that today, Matt, when you asked him, say, we're just trying to do, when you asked him about the announcements this week, he said, we're trying to do what's best for the team, what's best for the players. But my only concern is that with only 19 players at the moment, maybe the team will not get enough points between now and July 18. And there is always next season, but to me, it just feels like a wasted a season. And maybe that would be good for Hartel to acclimate to the team and the playing style, and maybe he'll be ready to make a splash next year. But I don't know. That's my only concern, that when these transformers come, it may be too late.
Listen, if you can do it in any league, this is the one, right? All you need to do is get to 9th place
Sure.
and go on a run, right? It would be ridiculous, but it could happen. So, Matt, we've spent a lot of time. You don't have much time to do this, but let's talk about Atlanta a little bit.
There's a handful of things to know, and it's not going to take long. We know where St. Louis is. We're coming off a 7-game winless streak. We're 12th in the West, 3-6-9 record, 18 points on 18 games. We fall into a -7 goal differential. We know how we've performed the past few games. Atlanta is coming into this in a weird place right now. They're 9th in the East. They've climbed the ladder a bit. They're 5-8-5 in 18 games with 20 points and a +2 goal differential. They're 2-3-3 on the road, so not a terrible road record. Their last few games, they had a 1-0 win at DC on Wednesday, a 2-2 draw versus Houston last weekend, and a 3-2 loss at home to Charlotte 2 weeks ago. That Charlotte loss is notable for Atlanta because it cost their head coach his job. Gonzalo Pineda was fired as head coach after the Charlotte match, with Rob Valentino taking his place as the interim head coach for Atlanta United. This is his second stint as the interim head coach of Atlanta United. He took the job before Pineda in 2021 when Gabriel Heinz was fired midway through that season in July. Now, Valentino will look to make his mark and try to earn the head coaching position that he wasn't able to get last time. Valentino hasn't lost yet in 2 games. He had a 4-2-2 record in 2021 when Atlanta United was his. And so he's looking to build on his resume right now, but he's in a tough spot to do it in St. Louis. Atlanta United, we talked off air that they have a quality team that they've built, but quality comes with its drawbacks when you have 2 major international competitions occurring. Luis Abram, center back for Atlanta United, is with Peru in the Copa America, and they are missing 2 key midfielders in Saba Lobojinenzi, I'm going to butcher that name, as well as Bartosz Slic. They're both in the Euros, and so they're out, missing 2 key midfielders. In addition to those 3 players on international duty, they are now missing Georgios Yakomakis, the Greek god who they've sold to Cruz Azul for a reported $10 million. Their leading goal scoring striker. And they're also going to be missing their key playmaker, their number 10, Thiago Almada, who is suspended with yellow card accumulation, as we confirmed today, Santi. So this is an Atlanta team that is depleted in a lot of their key areas for different reasons. St. Louis, but to me, this just evens the playing field.
I agree. I mean, and it's much needed as well. And so I think we'll take anything we can get in that regard. Any thoughts, Santi?
Yeah, you could say evens the playing field, but I don't know. Based on what has happened this year, missing players due to injury or international collapse, I don't think has played well in City's favor. I was telling Matt this morning. I remember when City played Houston in CONCACAF Champions Cup that Hector Herrera was injured and there were some more absences. Houston was still able to get the series, not by much, but they got it. And there was also a recent game, it may have been the Portland game, that there were also some absences due to injury, and the result was a scoreless draw. There is always a player that steps up. With that Portland game was the goalkeeper, the backup goalkeeper that ended up being the man of the match, and he didn't make a lot of saves, but he read the field really well and anticipated a few times some City plays. But yeah, I will discount the fact that Almada is out. Yeah, obviously their main playmaker, but they have a talented roster, so somebody else will step up.
You know, the weird thing to me is we might not understand what kind of Atlanta team we're seeing because of the missing stars and how that might impact the game plan that Valentino is going to employ. This Atlanta team is a possession-based team. They have the 7th highest percentage of possession in the entire league compared to St. Louis. It has the 6th lowest. When you talk about competing styles like we had against Colorado, where they're both pressing teams, they're both looking to have less than 50% possession, and they're looking to have transition attacks as their primary focus. This is not that team. Atlanta is likely going to run. Well, we actually don't even know what formation they're going to run because under Gonzalo Pineda, they ran a 4-2-3-1 most matches. They had Caleb Wiley and Brooks Lennon as their fullbacks. But this past Wednesday, just like City, they ran out with 3 center backs and they used wing backs with Wiley and Lennon in those roles. In 2021, looking back at what Valentino did when he was the interim coach back then, he used 5 in the back regularly. So it's not unlikely to me that we're going to see a look that has width to Atlanta United and looks to use their strengths in Caleb Wiley and Brooks Lennon to offset the fact that they're missing the talent in the midfield. They're missing the talent up front, and they're going to be relying on a guy like Daniel Rios to take over as their striker, who so far has 6 starts at 8 appearances, 2 goals, including 1 last weekend. So they have goal scoring capabilities. They're still looking for their next man up mentality. They still have a quality goalkeeper in Brad Guzan, but I think they're going to be looking a little different than what we've seen them because of these missing pieces and just overall trying to compensate for Giakoumakis has been out for a few games, so it's not like it's an immediate change for them, but Thiago Almada is going to be the immediate change. Giakoumakis hasn't played in a few matches in preparation for his transfer to Cruz Azul, but Thiago Almada has picked up the goal scoring. He's picked up the assists. Almada is in fact tied with Giakoumakis with 5 goals. Brooks Lennon is their leading assist guy with 5. I mean, to your point, Santi, they still have talent in these other areas that can be really dangerous for City. And we know how City sometimes gets stretched on their back line. They've been beaten through the lines direct with speed, but they've also been beaten when they have to spread their back line wide. And sometimes they fold in a little too far on one of the fullback sides, and the backside, the weak side, far post is open. That's a danger with guys like Caleb Wiley and Brooks Lennon being so advanced in their attack. Atlanta loves to move those outside backs high when they're in possession. They can have dangerous activity with their playmakers that can play off of them, moving their central midfielders into some attacking areas, getting on the ball and trying to drive the defense back. So it's going to be interesting to see how St. Louis plays if they're actually trying to bunker down a little bit to meet Atlanta when they start to possess the ball. Atlanta, to their credit, usually sets up in a mid block. So we're not going to see that low block that I think frustrates us so much. So there's opportunity there to get in and behind the lines in transition, like St. Louis might try to do and loves to do when they're successful. So, there's a lot of different facets here between the mid block, the possession, the width that Atlanta is going to have, the fact that they do like to control large portions of the field, especially in those wide areas. They have extremely high amounts of possession, greater than 55% on both wings in their attacking areas, all the way down. Every single area of both wings, they love to possess the ball. So if St. Louis can stay within themselves and keep the spacing tight, they're going to offer the kind of solution and breaking up passes, causing the interceptions that then they can immediately hit some transition to get in behind Atlanta. That's what I look for from St. Louis.
Any thoughts from you, Santiago? What would you like to see in this game from St. Louis or Atlanta?
Well, from St. Louis, and I know we're going to speak about it when we talk about lineups, but just seeing a team that basically is fighting for their season, because you said, team, you can sneak. Phil, you said you can sneak into the postseason in 9 plays, but even for 9 plays, I think we're starting to get in a situation where you will need to win a lot of games, and part of this is winning the games you have at home. And City only has 7 games left at home, so winning on Saturday will be very important, and hopefully the players understand the assignment and bring their A game on Saturday and good plan, and but it's gonna be difficult. Atlanta, Matt, you mentioned the new coach, undefeated in the 2 games he has been with the team, and Atlanta also won their last 2 away games. One was with Gonzalo Pineda, but notable that it was against Inter Miami, and then last night they beat DC United, also playing away. So it was their first 2 away games of the season. They're only 2, but they are recent. So it won't be easy, and doing well with the new coach. So it's a big task for City on Saturday.
That scares me that they beat DC United away. So they're not terribly different than us. Let's move on though. Let's do our lineup predictions. It's the fun part for me. I get most excited for this, and today is going to be especially fun for me personally. But Matt, let's start with you.
This is one where I admittedly have not even thought about this before this exact moment. So much so that in our show notes, I still had my lineup from 2 weeks ago where I had not updated it yet. I needed to look back to confirm Wednesday because if you're setting a lineup for Saturday, look to who played the most amount of minutes on Wednesday to
Yeah.
see who might not be playing. Uh, I am going to go with Berkey and net, obviously. I'm going to go with Anthony Marcanic as our left back, Josh Yarrow and Tim Parker as our center backs, Thomas Totland as our right back. And you know what? I'm actually going to redo that. I'm going to go with
What?
I'm going to go Michael Wenzel as our center back with Tim Parker. I think Josh Yarrow, because he played the full game, I'm going to give Wenzel the start. So Wenzel and Parker is our center back duo. I will have Jabulu Blom and Edu Leuven at the midfield role because Chris Durkin played the full 90. I'm going to have Johnny Klein, Indiana Vasilev, Brendan McSorley, and Klaus as our remaining attackers. So I guess this looks
Wow.
like a 4-2-2-2, and I'm banking on Johnny Klein getting a first-team contract in the next 2 days from when we're recording this, I suppose. Brendan McSorley, Bradley Carnell had a ton of positive things to say about him. Not just he got the game ball on Wednesday night for his first appearance, his debut. But Carnell's been pretty consistent in his positivity for Brendan McSorley and the growth, the buy-in in the system, the productivity that he's had with City 2, and the willingness to learn. Chris Durkin even talked on Thursday at the press conference about how when he first came to town, Brendan McSorley was the first one that he went out to dinner with. They went to a Mexican restaurant. And so there's this, I feel like this is the kind of thing that can really spark a team when you have these kinds of relationships, you have these kind of stories. Sign Johnny Klein, plug him into the lineup, get him a run because Santi, you talked earlier about how we've used his 2 short-term loans on stop gaps at the very end of a game. We didn't get to see a run for Johnny Klein. Let him go. Give Brendan McSorley that second opportunity. McSorley might find his own first-team contract at some point because we still have the space. We have plenty of open roster slots, especially on the supplemental roster. Both of them are super draft picks, so they're not homegrowns, but they will be low hits to the cap, additional supplemental roster spots. I don't know. It's this third match in 8 days as well. Don't forget that in the midst of all this hubbub. Why not?
I like it. That's a really fun lineup. I'm interested in what Santiago has though. This could even get more fun here.
No, I don't think it will. It will have it. Matt had not changed his center back pairing, but I have
sorry.
I have Roman Berkey, Anthony Marcanic, Tim Parker, and Michael Wenzel. I do have Akil Watts as a right back. Then I have Leuven and Jabulo Blom. Then Leuven, Jabulo Blom. Then Basilev, Kijima, and Klaus and Brendan McSorley.
Okay, not terribly different. There's a bit of a departure for me, so I'll go. I don't normally list my whole lineup, but it's different enough this time. I will. Berkey, I'm going to say Marcanic goes because he played center back and he wasn't as athletic as he always was. I think Yarrow plays again. I think consistency with center backs, even every 3-4 days, is something you do. So I think Yarrow and Parker in this one. I would start Totland. There's a shot for Watts because I think Watts had a great game, and Totland has put so many miles on his legs,
including a full 90 on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So either or on that one. I would start Durkin if possible, but it's a good game for Blom since Durkin put 90 on. So I'll say Blom and Leuven. And then I think Thor starts this one to get some kind of consistency of style. And then I would start Kijima if my support athletic staff would let me. And I don't know if they would let me do something like that based on how he looked at the end of that game.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't start, easy, I plug in Klein. Sign him. I think we all agree Klein needs to be signed, it sounds like. So there you go. Indy's fresh and ready. He didn't put in that many minutes.
Right.
He's going to be key to this game. And I want McSorley up top. I want Klaus on the bench. And I would gather these guys. I would say, listen, I know we've been trying to do this possession thing. We're throwing it out the window. We're going balls to the wall on this one, fellas. We're going all out, team hungry. Atlanta's going to try to possess this. It's going to play right to our style. We're going to go nuts on these people in their own, third. And, I think Klein would look good doing that. Kijima would be great if he can do it with the legs. McSorley will put in a solid shift. Will there be playmaking? Not much. Will McSorley be able to, get past center backs and do something special? Probably not. But if there's a turnover and an opportunity, that's a lineup that can score a goal and scrap a goal in 90 minutes. And at the end, maybe you throw on some talented attackers in the last, 20, 30 minutes. Let's say 15, 20 minutes since it's Bradley Carnell, right?
Honestly, the thing I like most about your lineup is having Thor in there. I wanted to see Thor start on Wednesday. He didn't, but he did come in around 69 minutes or so. And so I think that's a good shout. If you see Thor, that makes all the sense in the world. I might even acquiesce to that in our consensus one, just because I think one of Klaus or McSorley and then Thor with them is just fine. And I think that's logical based on the minutes. And if you're going to not start Klaus, this is the game, because you have the cover of 3 games in 8 days. Carnell doesn't have to be brutally honest or even go direct to he's having a rough stretch, we're going to give him the night off. He can go to we've been running him ragged, and this is 3 games in 8 days. He'll be back. We're not giving up on Klaus. He can use all of those euphemisms he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
This gives him cover for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he can come second half, 65th, 70th minute.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm sold on that one. We have that one for our consensus.
Right.
Oh boy. All right, guys. I went a little long with that, but a quick score prediction. Let's go, Matt.
2-1 St. Louis.
Santi.
2-0 St. Louis, and Johnny Klein with a new contract. He also scores a goal.
I love it.
Oh,
I'm going
boy.
to say 1-0 St. Louis City. Gosh, we need a win, guys. And this
bad.
is a good opportunity. That's it from us. Please do check us out on our podcast if you'd like to hear more conversation tonight. I think it's going to get really interesting. So check out the Wind Down, which will be in our podcast version. Otherwise, thank you for joining us on the Big 550 KTRS. We're Flyover Footy, and we are presented by Noble Ice Vineyards. Enjoy the game, everyone. Bye-bye. That was a good finish. I didn't repeat anything. This is what I've been working toward.
Well
Phil
done.
is in form if St. Louis City is not.
There we go.
I do
maybe
think. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think if we score 1 goal, we might score 3 or 4. Like, this could.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that the dam could break, and we just need that confidence boost. So I'm hyping myself up for, if we score 1, we're going to score like 3 or 4.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
It would be a release. Absolutely. So let's get some beers and
Guys,
and really dig in.
We got a lot to talk about in this
So
wind
much.
down. We'll be right back.
All right. Damn it.
Oh, lost Santi on the stream. Oh boy, this is gonna be a wind down. If you have any questions and you're watching us on our live stream, toss them into the chat. Whatever platform, YouTube, X, Instagram, we will answer. There's a thread that I put up on the Flyover Footy X account after the game, calling for thoughts, feedback, and boy, was it wide and varied on everything. It's everything from just, we don't know what to do next. New players can't join for a month, so we seem rudderless, lost. It's quality of depth, injuries finish, everything's just dark and gray. A lot of thoughts for Carnell out. That's started to permeate a little bit through the fandom. I don't think we're there yet. I don't know that the losses have piled up to the extent. I think the draws have kind of bought him some, like, not apathy, but in the sense of he got points sometimes from losing positions, sometimes giving him up. I don't know. I'm not there for Darnell out. I don't think it's as dire, especially because the injury, cover. That does provide him a lot of cover in the same sense that benching Klaus this weekend would provide Carnell cover. Phil, I'm just going through some of the comments from, our Epic X thread.
Oh, yeah. I hit the worst of it first, so it gave me a bad taste, and I never went back. But I
Oh,
did a little to make sure that, I knew that it wasn't all bad.
It was a lot of it was bad. Carnell botched the night, terrible starting lineup, slow with subs. There was some positivity. Akil Watts had a lot of love in that thread, saying he did surprisingly good. I thought so as well. And in fact, if you looked at that goals added stat that I posted on X, Akil Watts had a really low goals added. Goals added also looks at fouling. It has 6 stats. It
Oh,
has 6 categories that it looks to for how it determines the number, and how it determines like overall value. It's like scoring, passing, receiving, dribbling, fouling, all those things. And fouling for Akil, obviously he gave up the PK at the end, so that's why he had a low goals added. Everything else, I thought he was fairly good. The spacing on the left wing back spot was iffy at times, but man, did he do some cool stuff with the ball out there
he
on the wing.
did. He
And
did.
His
He looked
speed.
great.
it worked really well too with Marcanic, who got forward a little more than I was comfortable with. But you would see
That's what I
Watts
was. Yes.
invert in, and then Marcanic would overlap, and it was fun. I
That's what I
enjoyed
was
it.
saying about the spacing, and like it seemed like they just didn't quite know where to put themselves because so many times, like it was obvious that it was a 3 center back look, but so many times Marcanic would just get higher into that midfield where he'd be in line with like Jabulu Blom, who was the out and out 6,
Yeah.
and I was just unsure of like what are they actually doing here? It seems like a little disjointed in that regard, and I would have liked to have seen if they're going to do something like that. Just go for it. Like Marcanic, just press high in support of Watts and just
I
leave
don't
your 2
know.
center
He
backs back
did.
there.
I thought he did. And if any of those comments said something about that's too defensive of a lineup, like if Bradley Carnell has 3 center backs, it is not a back 5. It is
Yeah.
never used like a back
No,
5. It is
Right.
like you
no.
have 3 guys back there for a counterattack, and that's it. Everyone
Yeah.
else is up. So, if let's just kill that from now on. That's not what we're seeing, but
Yeah. Wing backs are like I was describing Atlanta and their wing backs. Like that's what Carnell does with it. Totland does it regularly as a fullback. Marcanic does it often
yeah,
as the fullback on the other side. Watts does it all the time as a fullback. Yeah.
it's a little too much sometimes.
Yeah.
Great. Let's do this. Let's get going.
Let's do it.
And thanks for your comments, guys. Once I did go back and read past some of the bad ones, I was like, oh, okay. Those are flyover fans, our listeners. Sorry, flyover listeners that are a little more level-headed.
Klaus is the longest leash. Totland had some love. Kojima had some love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the wind down.
Guys, I did it for the first time. It's a true wind down. I've got the Noble Ice Swirl. It's a sangria, elderberry and black cherry. It's that kind of
I
night.
liked that one. Yeah, it's a wine night for me as well. I mean, it's not Noble Ice, but I had some wine laying around and I felt it.
I need to try that sangria, Matt.
It's good.
They have it at City Park at the first place. I actually tried it when they were sampling it outside City Park on Luffy's Plaza before a game one time. Yeah. They do those regularly. It's quality. And Noble Ice is all over the place at these like pop-up markets, art fairs, things like that, and they have these. So if you get a chance, it's called Swirl in the can. It's real good, the sangria.
And they have, I think actually I haven't tried those. Don't they have what do you call the sparkling drinks? Don't they have those too? Or maybe I had the sangria.
You probably had the sangria. They have a bunch of different. There's like 3 or 4 different cans. One of them looks like sparkling.
Well, it's very light
yes.
and easy to drink. So
crisp,
yes,
and refreshing.
Which not all sangrias are. So well done there.
Yeah. Do we want to do housekeeping first?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, because this is, and so let's be real. I want to real talk for a second. So we've got our wine opened. Let's do real talk for a second. Pausing the St. Louis City talk for just a moment. Um, you guys know that we consider ourselves incredibly passionate St. Louis City soccer fans of St. Louis, soccer fans in general. You also know that if you've been following Flyover Footy since 2019, when we started doing it in earnest and we transformed Phil's STL soccer report into Flyover Footy, he invited us on and we really picked this thing up and went with it. We started off once every 2 weeks at the most, covering St. Louis FC, covering MLS for the Lou, all of the happenings around soccer in St. Louis. And we've gotten to this point where we as a collective are doing 3 shows a week now. It's ramped up somewhat slowly, somewhat quickly. We've gone from a show every other week at the most to making sure we do our Thursday recording every week to getting on the radio. 550 has been incredibly kind in airing our first 45. That's why we do this. It's fantastic for us. We love it. Love being able to do it. It's an awesome opportunity to get more soccer talk on the radio, which we have been desperate for who knows how long. And then Santi and I saw the need for Fallout, and we started doing the recaps, and it became regular. And we found a pretty good groove with 8 a.m. on Sundays or day after, getting into the timely talk, because who doesn't want more soccer talk? And that's the goal. It's not just so we can talk about it, because obviously we'd love to, but it harkens back to the time before St. Louis City and right when City started, where we were just desperate for media to cover soccer in St. Louis in whatever form it had. St. Louis FC, national team, Josh Sargent, Tim Ream, anything that we could get our hands on, pressuring the media, radio, TV, anything. Just focus more on soccer, because you can't call St. Louis America's soccer capital if you're not willing to cover it in all its forms. And so that has led to this passion to keep this going, get as much possible, and continue to provide the type of content that we want and we think that people digest well. You love the game more if you know more about the game. And that's part of our goal with Flyover Footy. And so then that led to the midweek pod that I've started to do this year. So it's a lot. And to that extent, Phil and I were recently contacted by a company called Believe. Believe is a podcast producing platform. They do digital sports, pop culture content. They have a host of podcasts throughout every single major sport in America. They have a channel on Fubo TV. They have YouTube deals. 11 Yanks is one of their guys on YouTube. Manuel Veth's Gegenpressing is on this platform. And they reached out to us and they wanted to know if we would be interested in joining their network. Their goal in general in sports is to have a podcast that covers every single team on every single sport. So they've been big into the NFL, getting former players connected with analysts and having a focused podcast and high quality content that I've researched and been pretty impressed with the variety and depth of reporting that I've seen from them. And so to that end, we have entered into an agreement with Believe. And so there are 2 things I think that are really important to know about this if you're listening and you love Flyover Footy. One, first and foremost, absolutely nothing will change regarding what we're doing, the content we're doing, the types of discussions we have. Creative control, still 100% Flyover Footy. There is absolutely nothing that has or will change with that. It is our podcast. Nobody else owns it. Nobody else will touch it. Nobody else will give input on any type of topic. The other thing that will change is you will start to hear ads on Flyover Footy. I can already hear the groaning. I'm so sorry. This is what we want to do in order to continue to be able to do this to the level that our time is capable of spending on it. And this allows us to continue to do more, continue to improve, continue to bring this as regularly as possible without burning us the hell out. It is something that we've stewed on long and hard. Stu had to get that in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a tough conversation, especially with Phil and myself. Tough to debate. Is this something we really want to add into Flyover? Is it going to seem like a sellout situation? Is it going to seem like we're not being authentic or we're adding something into this? And so this, if you've listened to Manuel Vet's podcast, Gegenpressing, this is an ad-supported platform that will allow us to continue doing the best thing in the world, which we want to do, which is bring soccer content for St. Louis as regularly and as in-depth as possible. More time allowing us to spend on this. I have never been a big fan of ads in podcasts. I understand it. Whenever ads come up, I find out how long they're going to take on Total Soccer Show, for instance. I know how long their ads take, and I hit that skip button.
Oh man.
And I'm not saying do that for ads that you hear on Flyover, because they might be good companies, but it's not up to us what ads will get placed. It's up to us to approve them. Yes, but part of the deal is we don't have to do any work in recruiting ads. It's Believe who's doing that work. That's what they bring to the table. And so we're not having political ads on Flyover. I can guarantee it. But we will have like ads that they want to put on our show and market to the soccer fan base, St. Louis, whatever the market analysis says. So this is honestly like a difficult thing to present, because it's going to change how the beginning of Flyover is. It's going to change the very end of Flyover, and it may change the middle of Flyover at some point if we decide to insert ads into the middle of our show as organically as possible at appropriate breaks. What might happen? We hope you bear with us. I hope that this doesn't turn off anybody to what we're doing, to our content. I'm open to any and all feedback. I am open to, if you hate this and it is a deal breaker to the content that we provide, that you're anti-ad, I want any and all feedback on this. I'm so interested. I'm nervous. Flyover Footy will always be free. Joseph Iliff in our chat is asking, still free to subscribe. Nothing, absolutely nothing paid is going to happen. We are not putting anything about Flyover Footy behind a paywall. Nothing at all. You're just going to hear an ad at the beginning. You're going to hear an ad at the end, and you might hear an ad in the middle at some point. That's the extent. And if you skip it, skip it. But I think this is a massive way that we can continue to do what we want to do with Flyover Footy as often as we do it, providing the regular content without being burned out on it. Honestly, that was an issue for Phil and myself, especially at the end of last season. Still keeping with the real talk. I had to take some time off at the end of last season, believe it or not, because I was burned out, and I don't want to get to that point. And I think this is helping keep that refocus. So stay tuned. Well, I mean, I don't know how exactly this is going to sound until I hear it. But it could happen as early as next week is my understanding of Believe's plan for us. And so any feedback you have is welcome feedback.
Yeah, and I would just want to say that it wasn't an easy choice. I think there was a lot of hesitance involved, especially immediately. I think the first thought is, well, is this a scam? Is this ridiculous? It's important to us to not come off in a certain bad way.
Yeah.
And so, I would say this isn't something we went out looking for at all. But when we first started talking about, monetize, I think we said, and Joseph Iliff asked, is this all local ads? I don't think it's going to be local, but what we envisioned initially was like, all we wanted was a local sponsorship, local ads, work together with the community, and hopefully do some kind of joint stuff, which will come with Noble Ice. And we're still open to that. And I hope that we do expand that, especially. And we didn't want to do a Patreon thing, even though I considered that. It feels like you're asking or begging for money. And so the way I look at it is it's the lesser of all the evils, that I hope you guys just don't get too annoyed with an ad at the beginning, an ad at the end. Get it over with and listen to your podcast, and you can watch us on YouTube and all this other stuff too. So, the money's coming straight to us. I think that would be something, if I was an avid listener, I'd be happy that, I'm not doing a Patreon straight to them, but I do listen to these ads and the money is going to my friends in soccer. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts that went through my head. It wasn't an easy choice. But that's, how we're moving forward for now. And please, again, if the DMs are just full of, man, this sucks, this is the worst, I'd rather hear that from you guys than not. So send them
give
in if you feel that way.
and give it a chance. I would say, like, let's see what this ends up being. And for the record, believe is spelled BLEAV, which was odd to us at first. It's part of what made us second guess and have to do like a litany of due diligence and research into what this is because we hadn't heard of it. But I mean, I looked him up on Twitter at first, and there's a lot of people I know in the media industry, even with St. Louis City, who follow this organization. And it turns out that they're as legit as it comes when it comes to podcasting. They also have, like I said, Fubo TV channel for their NFL stuff. Like they told me that one of BLEAV, Jerry in our live stream chat, they told me that one of their goals is this. What omni-channel media is a cliche at this point, but to have all of this content and eventually maybe it reaches the networks, like ESPN, NBC, like some kind of package in that. And that's part of their goal into having a footprint into all the markets. And so we are pretty honored that they reached out to us and wanted us to be that for St. Louis in soccer. And knowing that our friend Manuel Veth with Gegenpressing is a part of this as well was honestly
That helped me
a
a lot.
huge deal to us.
Agree. All right, that's that. Let's move on.
Yes. Let's move on to Marcel Hartel, guys. Hartel. I mean, we teased him. I added this right after, as soon as we couldn't go deep on the KTRS part, I wanted to get it right into Marcel Hartel. This is the thing that on Thursday evening, when we heard the press conference, off air, I referred to Bradley Carnell's vibe in the Thursday press conference as it feels like the layers are peeling off of positivity, and you're getting to a point where he couldn't really come up with much positive to take away from Colorado. He wanted to move on from that as quick as possible. Jake Nerwinski, right after the game on Wednesday, wanted to move on from it. They saw some tape in the locker room. I think it just left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. 7 winless games in a row, 4 matches at City Park without getting a win in a row. This is grating on a fan. It's nails on a chalkboard. We have to come out of this somehow. And so Marcel Hartel is the centerpiece of what a post-Leagues Cup St. Louis City team will look like in my eyes. Manuel Veth has, like I said earlier, we're recording this Thursday night, as official as it can be. Transfermarkt confirms that a deal is now in place. If this is announced on Friday, it's still timely because he's ours. Marcel Hartel is joining St. Louis City. He's in the United States, and a transfer should be announced very soon. He's a 28-year-old attacking midfielder. If you haven't been listening to us and what we've talked about, he has earned promotion for 2 of his 2 Bundesliga sides, Arminia Bielefeld and FC St. Pauli. So this is a guy who takes teams from positions that they are striving to get out of, and he makes something of them. He leads teams into better areas. That's a position that I think we are desperate for St. Louis to be in at this point in time, is a better area. The deal also has a piece with the Columbus Crew. It has a contingency that the Columbus Crew do own discovery rights for Marcel Hartel. They had a deal in place, or at least pursuing a deal with him in May that was rumored to be in the $1.5 million range. That deal fell apart. Don't know why that deal fell apart, but it did. So they own his discovery rights as a result. St. Louis has been rumored to be willing to pay $350,000 for those discovery rights. The very fun thing for me is that this has a relationship back to the Marco Reus rumors as well. Hartel and Reus share an agent, first of all. So that's a huge thing in the discussions with Lutz. But also, the price that St. Louis has been rumored to be willing to pay Columbus is $350,000 for the discovery rights for Hartel. This is a record. And it's also, without coincidence, no doubt, the same exact amount that Charlotte has been rumored to be asking the LA Galaxy for Marco Reus's discovery rights.
Okay.
Guys, this tells me that if St. Louis is quickly willing to pay that amount as essentially a transfer fee to get Hartel, they were probably willing to do that with Reus. They were locked and loaded, ready to bring on a central attacking midfielder. And I think that this season this is my personal opinion on this at this point. I think the season has worn on Lutz so much. He is so disappointed in these ineffective result after ineffective result, seeing the chances being created, but seeing nothing happen in the final third that gives you any kind of consistent uh, positivity around this side. He's seeing this and he's saying, we need somebody in this number 10 role. We need somebody, a central attacking midfielder, whether it's the straight set cam role or whether it's a left 10 or a right 10, as Carnell likes to employ them. The need has been identified and he's willing to look at multiple players to fill that need and spend pretty big amounts of money, at least in context for what St. Louis spends, to do so. Hartel could be the highest paid player by salary on St. Louis City, which is currently Roman Berkey at the max TAM deal, restricted DP type deal. This is that caliber of player who is we couldn't get Royce, so we're getting Hartel.
Agree, and I want to throw out some other options, Matt, and maybe you can poke some holes in it. I welcome that. But I also feel like a couple things happened this year that either he might have, Lutz might have seen coming, or maybe not. But once St. Louis had to start adjusting their style of play, once possessing the ball and breaking down bunker defenses became a thing, and it wasn't quite working, I think the writing was on the walls. And I think, also maybe players not working out for Bradley Carnell. And so I think Lutz has had a very busy last 6 months based on just those things alone, right? Like, okay, our first plan needs some adjusting, and my search for players needs to adjust as well. We can't just go out and find athletic guys that can steal the ball and score. We can't put 11 Jared Strouds on the field and win, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think an adjustment was made by Lutz in that way. But also, I don't know, once the season started this year without any changes to the roster rules, I think everyone thought it was going to stay that way for the season. But I think the more we're seeing Atlanta and Miami wanting to just spend money, and we're seeing this rule that hasn't been officially changed yet, but will be changed. Or maybe it has. Is it official? They're acting like it's official. I didn't think it was announced yet. But anyway, it's clear that MLS teams all need to spend more money. So whatever you thought would work originally, you need to add a few million to that. And so I feel like it's been really clear based on how the season has gone that, Lutz has been able to sell some players and make some money. And also maybe, I don't know, chicken or egg here, but maybe convince ownership that maybe we thought we could do it this way, but that is the situation has changed now, right? We can't just get by. The designated team definition has changed as well. And we don't have a choice but to start spending money, or, we're going to get left behind. And I guarantee you he was happy to we can make this work a certain way, but you need to temper your expectations on results. And last year was a lot of fun, right? And we're seeing what it's like right this second after Wednesday's game. So I really wanted to fit that in. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to say that. I think things have changed, and I think this is a sign of them recognizing the change.
Well, I went back to the Transfermarkt article for Cedric Teuchert when he was first being rumored. This was the infamous "we don't need a DP" type thing. And the verbiage that Transfermarkt used at the time, which is going into the season, we just lost Nico Gioacchini. So the thought is our roster has been bolstered at this point in time by Thomas Totland, Nicholas Dewar, and Chris Durkin. We have answers to both of our fullbacks. We have answers to our center defensive mid-depth. We don't need anything necessarily better or different because everything is still there depth-wise. At the time, we still had Ostrak, Salio. We had Thor getting ready to come onto a full season. The pieces were there. The improvements were made in the key deficient areas. And it says, quote, St. Louis City SC aren't interested in signing any new player to a designated player deal. It didn't say in replacement of Nico Gioacchini. It just said they're not interested in signing a new player. I don't think we were actually in the market at that point for a central attacking mid, for another number 10. We had Tomas Ostrak, AZ Jackson, Indiana Vasilev. We had all of these pieces who had more or less successful 2023s that you think they're ready to take the next step up. Nobody could have predicted what happened with AZ Jackson this year. he was fresh off a national team camp. Cupcake was his first call up
Camp
to the
Cupcake.
national team. Like he was launching his career still. 22 years old right now. All the things in the world were ahead of him in what he had built for himself in 2023. Indiana Vassilev, same thing. He's still 23 years old. He's still ascending to where he can be. And Tomas Ostrak had the opportunity to step in, and we saw what he actually did later in the deeper part of the defensive in the midfield. So at the time, we didn't need to do anything. So we're only looking to replace Nico Gioacchini to keep at the level, not yet build massive things on top of it, but keep that Western Conference winning attack together. That fell apart because we weren't willing to pay the transfer fee to get Teuchert out of Hanover. They were wanting like $1 million in a transfer fee. We weren't willing to go. They would have made him a designated player, weren't willing to do it. Fast forward now, though, to what you're saying, Phil, and the pieces on the chessboard have shifted so seismically in what we need to do and what Lutz needs to do in this is year 4 of his now 6-year plan, because he signed that extension. So he's with us for another year. Lutz doesn't want to see his project that he's built from the ground up years ago with the academy, with the 2 team, and now with City winning the conference. He doesn't want to see that made a laughing stock in year 2. And for everybody to say this was a flash in the pan, now we're seeing the real St. Louis City. This is personal to him. I have no doubt that every single time that we lose a game, we draw a game, we're not able to get a result at home, he's taking this personally, and he's pissed. And so that's leading to whatever it's taken him to talk Carolyn Kindle into a DP deal for Marcel Hartel. That's what's happened. He's not taking this with kid gloves. The gloves are off as far as what he's willing to do to turn this thing around. And if this week hasn't reinforced that with sending out AZ Jackson, sending out Nicholas Dewar on an actual transfer, not just a loan, and now putting Sam Adeniran on the chopping block while bringing in Hartel. I mean, there's so much that goes into this right now in where I'm picturing Lutz's mind.
Now, Santiago, you and I actually about a year ago started begging for a U22 playmaking attacker. So I don't want to say that we were reading the future, right? Like we saw the tea leaves, but maybe we had something there. But no, absolutely joking that we wanted that no matter what, because we don't care about how much players cost, right? But what do you think about all of these changes, the signing of Hartel? I'm excited for it, and I imagine you are too.
I am, and I'm glad the team is adjusting. I was asking you guys earlier this afternoon on our DMs. There were some remarks from Lutz a few weeks ago, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like making some tweaks and adjusting. And I think what has transpired this week is part of that. Yeah, some players leaving the team, and then bringing another DP, which is something that earlier in the year he said wasn't needed, and the team wasn't looking to into doing that. But I think this league changes every year. So last year was successful, and even last year before the season, we said, okay, this is the roster. Maybe depending on how things go during the summer transfer window, um, some new players will come if needed, and then it won't be maybe another DP, another U22. But the team was successful right off the bat. So at the time that wasn't needed. Obviously, Torrison and Marcani came to bolster the roster. And then going into 2024, yeah, you bring some players, but keep the core of your roster. And now seeing that the team is not being as competitive as maybe Lutz and everybody thought they were going to be, now some adjustments are needed. And also with the possible rule changes in MLS, now you are able to do this, spend more money. It's still not that like so a lot of people still don't know, and I didn't know who Marcel Hartel was. It's still not like that huge, well-known player that is gonna break the market and is gonna sell a lot of jerseys. But I like what the team is doing, spending some money to improve the roster. I just hope we can hold the next 4 or 5 games, gets enough points to not get too far from playoff positions, and then when all these new players come, take those 9 2 games after League's Cup and make a big run, and then come to the playoffs in great form. And the other thing that the team needs to do this year is win a playoff series. So hopefully that will happen. The team will come on note and be ready for the playoffs. So we'll see. We'll see how this transpires. But I like the change in direction. I think it's necessary to adapt to what the league is doing and to stay competitive.
The other thing that I thought of is I think back to last year's squad, and we didn't just gain a few players. We didn't just gain Marcanic and Thor and then gain Totlin and Dewar and Durkin, but we lost Nico Gioacchini, Jared Stroud, and Lucas Bartlett. Stroud and Bartlett are fascinating to me because I think a lot of people this year are now retrospectively appreciating what Jared Stroud brought to this team. And I don't necessarily know that he has made the difference not having him in what's happened this year. I wouldn't go that far. But I do think it's interesting that we have now brought in an attacking midfielder. Obviously, we've targeted two from rumors, and we've also brought in a center back. And we joked weeks ago about it being a long-term plan for Tim Parker, and those are funny jokes. I have other thoughts in what I think St. Louis might be able to do to keep Tim Parker, but my point is that Lucas Bartlett had a pretty sizable impact last year in various portions of the league, and I don't know that he was ever like a long-term prospect that St. Louis was saying, okay, this is our diamond in the rough. We're going to look to Lucas Bartlett for being Tim Parker's replacement when he retires. But I do think it's interesting that the two positions that we've really brought in this transfer window really replace, in a sense, Jared Stroud's midfield and Lucas Bartlett center back. And it's also notable to me that DC United has found two starters in Lucas Bartlett and Jared Stroud. Like they're MLS caliber starters. And I do wonder if Lutz is a little bit, I don't know, frustrated that they gave away those assets. Now, nobody's second guessing Chris Durkin's arrival, but like that's a lot to give up to have. I mean, two MLS caliber starters for a DC United team, in addition to $300,000 GAM for Chris Durkin. Like they paid a huge sum for what they've turned into for DC United, and so all of that comes back to just the sheer fact that while we're adding pieces, it still kind of feels like we're trying to make up ground in a way. Like we're still trying to fill roster slots that we've gotten rid of. Because I don't have the list in front of me, but I mean, it's Bartlett, Stroud, Gioacchini, AZ, Dewar, Sam. Like that's 6 players from last year's ending roster that we've sent out. And we've brought in Totlin, Durkin, Toykert, and Girdwood Reich, and now Hartel. So we're still making that ground up.
I disagree. I absolutely. This rarely happens, Matt.
That we disagree. Oh yeah, it never happens.
Well, no, to this degree.
Okay.
I absolutely disagree because I think the things that we replaced in Stroud and Bartlett, like tell me the loss between talent level and pressing ability and scoring ability between Stroud and Celio, and then tell me the defensive ability difference between Bartlett and, let's say, Yarrow or Wenzel or Hebert. In my opinion, I think now I'm not saying there's not a difference. There is, but I would say that Lutz looked at like the things that Stroud brought and the things that Bartlett brought, and he thought, I think this designated team can fill the roles that they presented to a slightly lesser degree, and we can still be successful and do the things we need to do, while, let's say, we downgraded in certain ways at worst with those two players. What we've improved with Durkin, to me, is life-changing with this club. Now, I know the results haven't been there, but watchability of our midfield this season, to me, is irreplaceable. It is, oh, it has been chef's kiss to me to be able to watch the development of our rotation of our midfield. And so I think it was a beautiful upgrade. And I do think rather than, I'm going to be the positive guy, Matt, rather than saying we're playing catch up, I think Lutz is saying we're going to bring in some young players that could fill those roles that are being plugged right now by Celio and the other guys that I mentioned, and not only like plug those in 2 years from now, but have them be times two what Bartlett and Stroud were. Hopefully, right? That's the
That's
goal.
fair. Yeah, and that's entirely fair. And I do agree in our live stream chat, Tommy Atkinson. I think we only miss Bartlett and Stroud now because of the injuries to our mid and back lines, and that's absolutely probably what's going
Fair.
on in the sense that we talked about it
That's a
earlier,
much
right?
shorter version of what I said. Thanks,
Yes,
Tommy.
Salio, Ostrak out for the season. I mean, the replacement to Stroud of the ascension of Salio Pompeu, for instance, that was life changing for St. Louis City. Like he earned every bit of his contract and more. Salio Pompeu did, and that was the thing that probably got us to where we are now because we lost Stroud and replacing that spot in the lineup, and then also having losing an attacker and all, losing a defender in Nilsson, the left back issues that we've had. Dewar was a swing and a miss. All of these things play into the perception that has led to here, not necessarily what the intention would have been had all these players remained healthy. So I think that you're probably right in the sense, but like I keep going back to these open roster slots that we have and the depth and down to 16 players available to play who are
Yeah.
rostered city players. Like MLS,
Well,
I mentioned in the main part that there's a hardship rule in MLS. If you get down to 15 available outfield players, you can call up players like for free, essentially on short term loans. Like you're given
that's
leeway to do that,
funny. Let's
which
just
is
make that happen somehow.
and that
No.
yeah.
Whose knees do we got to break? I'm absolutely kidding. I think that leads to the next conversation because I think it ties perfectly in with what's happening with Sam. I want to talk about what's happening with Sam, but like we've gotten to some degree, whether it's true or not, I would love to debate the possibility that Lutz and or Carnell have gotten us into this situation on their own. I mean, not injuries, right? Not injuries. Absolutely. Like the injuries may have like really exposed something that was like a risk. But I really want to talk about that. Like Sam's going out, AZ went out. Like you said, these are players that were very promising last year. Not holding back Gioacchini to go to Italy. Those were all risks, and it looks like perhaps a lot of things have kind of gone wrong with the risky moves that we've made. What do you guys think about this Sam situation and the situation we're in there?
Santi, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it before. Timing is not good, but if you have a player that may not be committed to the team, and we don't really know what happened, but last game, not last night, but last Saturday, after watching Sam, I finally came around and I was like, he's not committed. You can tell he's not happy, and so you have to do what is better for the team, even if it means that on a Wednesday night you will leave. You will have basically you have to call up a few of City 2 guys, and you even give yourself the luxury of not filling a roster spot for the game the roster. But yeah, timing wise is not great, and I think the injuries are part of it, and Nicolas Dewar wasn't also working, but it's just difficult to see all these guys leave when the transfer window is about a month away, less than a month now, and then you're short on players due to the injuries, and you're also in a position where you need to start getting more points. So yeah, timing wise is not great, but I think long term it'll be good for the team. Maybe and maybe that's what the team needed. Maybe that change with some, and we don't know what was happening in the dressing room, but maybe with Sam leaving, maybe like chemistry will be better, and team will start playing better, not having some of those distractions. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. But yeah, it's concerning that you are so short on players and on options for games when you need points. Maybe next week we will be having a different conversation after City gets 3 points against Atlanta. Things can change very quickly week to week.
Agree. And Matt, I want to, before you speak, I actually want to frame the question in the most negative possible way for you to respond to, because I think this works really well this way. Because let me first draw a line in the sand and say, anyone calling for Carnell's head right now, I'm sorry, but no, like no, way too soon. Not even close. All right, let's just erase everyone saying that as emotional drabble, right? Which I understand.
Michael on Twitter is going to be so upset with you.
Oh my gosh. I
Uh-oh.
understand the emotional tweeting. We've all done it. It's fine. I feel you, honestly, truly. I feel you in those moments. But look, we're going to throw that in the trash right now because I think it's too soon. But I will say there are people that might look at the fact that we've thrown 3 left backs in the trash can in a way, and look at the fact that Klaus, though he was injured, scored 10 goals last year in a certain amount of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam Adeniran also scored 10 goals in,
Much
way
less
less
amount of minutes.
minutes, right? Joe Aquini, I think we can throw on the side and say we're proud of him. We're happy for him. Best move we could do. It helps the team in the future to show that we're willing to send guys off even though we need them. So throwing that in the trash too. Azil got called into the national team last year, guys. He was looking great in that system, was looking dangerous. Has Carnell ruined that too? I'm just saying, worst case scenario, there are several pieces of evidence here that, yes, it could be all the players. It could be all Bradley Carnell. Like, where do we fall on this plot graph here, Matt?
Oof. I was not expecting to go that way, but I'm not yet convinced that Bradley Carnell doesn't have the solution to St. Louis City's evolution. I do think that injuries have played massive factors in that, and it's a crutch to go to the injuries, but at the same time, like, be realistic. It's the reality. Tomas Ostrak had stepped in for Edu Leuven. So you had your 1A central midfielder, number 8, who had the most devastating thing happen to a family member that he had to deal with, the team had to deal with. He had to step away while going through an injury. And you had Tomas Ostrak step in and do an amazing job in a position that he had never played before. And now Tomas Ostrak goes down to an injury. And so Leuven comes back, but you lose that other piece that had been finally rounding into form since we brought him in 2022. And Rasmus Alm is the same way. The guy couldn't stay healthy, got healthy, went down again with a separate unrelated injury. And then all over the field, it's rinse and repeat. It's Salio, it's Nielsen. And then the left backs are another issue that do speak more directly to whether it's Lutz or Carnell or a combination of, you think this is the answer. Johnny Nelson is a pass to me because we got him for free in the expansion draft. And we took a chance on a guy that we projected could be and got us to a pretty good position. We won 5 in a row starting Johnny Nelson at left back. And we brought in Anthony Marcanic to be a backup left back. That was almost explicitly said by Lutz. And Nicholas Dewar was the answer. And we saw what happened with him. I look to, when we try to figure out like each one of these players, we try to figure out how much blame goes to the coach and how much blame goes to the player. I look to the few bits of information that we have in what has been said about each one of these players. For, in the most recent term, AZL Jackson, it's Lutz Pfannenstiel, who in the press release thanked AZ for his time and contributions, being a key part of the successful inaugural team. Like, we're talking glowing praises. Mutually beneficial trade that provides us flexibility to strengthen the roster. We know that's Marcel Hartel. But also Lutz says, while giving AZ a fresh start in Columbus. Did anybody expect AZ to need a fresh start in June of 2024, just 4 months ago? The guy you said coming off the national team camp, I was talking about it earlier. Suddenly he needs a fresh start. He worked fine with Bradley Carnell last year. So this isn't a situation he comes into a team and he butts heads with the coach. Like AZ thrived under Bradley Carnell. It took him a bit at the beginning of the season, and he had his chance against San Jose midway through last year. He was our number 10 through and through for the end of the year. The reason he had a national team call-up was because he was succeeding in a Bradley Carnell offense. Now, all of a sudden, he needs a fresh start. That's questionable to me. I look at Nicholas Dewar and what Lutz had to say about Nicholas Dewar, and that to me is a little more straightforward. Bradley Carnell with Nicholas Dewar earlier this year had positive things to say about his defense in the few minutes that he played, like 138 total minutes. But he also had concerns about his ability to attack and ability to buy into the system in a two-way fullback role. When he came in against the LA Galaxy, he shut down Joseph Paintstill. Yeah, but what did he do in the attack? And that's what we're looking for in our fullbacks. That's what Thomas Totland provides, the two-way massive attacking threat from wide areas. And with Nicholas Dewar going, all Lutz said is we thank him for his hard work and time. We wish him good luck back home with Rounders. Back home. I mean, read in between the lines of what he's saying here. It's pretty clear for Nicholas Dewar. With Sam Adeniran, the tentacles are much more intertwined. Going back to April 16th of this year, where we finally had Bradley Carnell say why Sam Adeniran was left off the Austin FC roster, why he was missing in training. Bradley Carnell had said about Sam Adeniran, right now we're focusing on guys who bring a certain standard, intensity, work effort in training, and those players will get rewarded. Sam, until further notice, will be training on his own. That is a very clear butting heads between player and coach. There's no way to get around that. He didn't necessarily, I guess he maybe threw Sam under the bus in the sense of he told his perspective in a direct answer that we asked him of why is Sam left off the roster and where is he today? Fast forward to now, and all Bradley Carnell is saying is he's leaving him off another roster, saying he's in current transfer and trade talks. And when I asked him on Thursday in the press conference about the timing that you mentioned, Phil, the timing of you're down to 16 guys, maybe 15 outfield players. You're calling up all these guys from City 2. You're pulling in reinforcements, but yet you could go into the Colorado game with 20 players on your roster and you choose to go into the game with 19 and purposefully leave off Sam. And Carnell said if there was any issues between AZ and Sam and other teammates or staff that led to it, Carnell tried to brush it off. He said, no, perspective is what's best for us now and the individuals moving forward. Decisions made have been collective decisions, not a knee-jerk decision. We don't know what collective that was. Was it Carnell, Lutz, Diego, and Hackworth? Or was it Carnell and Sam and those parties, Diego and Hackworth and Lutz? I think if you take what happened with AZ and you saw the success that he had last year, you juxtapose it to this year, suddenly needing a fresh start, and you see Sam never really had a consistent time to shine under Bradley Carnell. He was sent out on loan because he wasn't getting minutes. He was brought back, and yeah, he was highly successful in the limited minutes that we saw. I'm not arguing that we should have kept Sam. I'm not arguing that he wasn't effective because it was clear that he was. You mentioned the limited minutes, the 10 goals. This year, things seem to have really broken down specifically between Sam and Carnell. And I hesitate to speculate too much, but the stories are that Sam and AZ were roommates. And so there's a lot of scuttlebutt online about what those implications are and how you draw lines between what happened with AZ needing a fresh start this year when he was excelling last year and Sam never really buying in or colliding with Carnell this year, whatever you want to call it. And I reached out. I was curious about, is this Sam? Is this Sam? Because we now have to live with Carnell. We don't have to live with Sam. We have to live with Carnell. Is this a Sam thing? Is this a Carnell thing? How much more can we dive into it? And there isn't massive headbutting that went on with head coaches with Sam in Tacoma and with Seattle, but there was apparently some maintenance, some work that had to be done with Sam in Seattle. He has a very involved support system around him. He's bounced a lot in Europe before the Sounders signed him. I mean, he hasn't landed in a particular spot for an extended period of time, but he's been successful in the different ways that he approaches things. He's an effective goal scoring striker. But I've talked about this before, is we see what happens on the field and a very limited amount in what happens in training. There's so much more that we don't know that informs what goes on the field that we see. Just because a guy can be a prolific goal scorer, just because a guy can come in and he can score goals sometimes, other times he does things himself and he doesn't score. It's not like he's automatic. We can't assume that. That's not something that Sam has ever been, is automatic. But that doesn't mean that the pros outweigh the cons in what may be going on that we can't see. So the easy answer right now is Klaus is struggling. We know that Sam saw quality goals being scored in limited minutes. Obviously, why don't you just give Sam a chance? Why are we giving Klaus a long leash and we're sending Sam on the trade block? But I just, so much more goes into it to me than the X's and O's of Sam. Seems like he's an effective goal scorer. Klaus he's got the high XG, he's got the intangibles and the two-way attacking press, defensive work off the ball. There's so much more that goes into it, and I think that's where we are right now, is trying to draw connections between what's gone on with Sam and AZ and things that might have happened with Dewar and other players. It is a tangled web. It's a tricky tapestry to talk about. But the reason that I go down this road too is what I said, is we now have Carnell to live with for the next few years. He signed a contract extension. He's the man in charge, but the players who are getting shipped out seem to have some off the field issue having gone on, whether it's homesick, whether it's like a Sam and AZ situation. And we look to what Carnell's been able to draw from the players that he has available, and whether we trust that he will continue to be able to draw out of those players and the ones that come into St. Louis, regardless of the specific issues that might have gone on with Sam and AZ and anybody else.
What do you think, Santi?
I have just been thinking about that fresh start for AC, and yeah, obviously we will not know what happened, but he wasn't the same this year, and yeah, he started the year in great form, going to the national team, but as part of that, he missed a little bit of preseason too. But yeah, when he and he even was started at the beginning of the season, but his game wasn't the same as last year. Um, so I don't know if it was. There may have been an off-field issue too. We obviously I don't want to speculate on that, but just the fact that the press release mentions that fresh start, yeah, just tells me there was something going on. To me, it was unexpected. I was expecting Sam to be announced first, and I didn't really think there was an issue with AC. But yeah, now he's not here, and the team is gonna have to deal with these absences for a few weeks. But Matt, you have a good point. We only see a few pieces. There are a lot of things that we don't see, and I think these moves will be better for the team chemistry wise in the long term.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say really is that I wonder if the reason we saw AZ moved first is related to Marcel Hartel. Like they're unrelated moves, but it was also mentioned, in addition to the fresh start, that it was about the potential for other moves. And so this could have been Columbus wanting to secure AZ in handshake agreement for the discovery rights, right? Like they're not intrinsically related, but when you're adding something like Lutz said, this provides us flexibility to potentially strengthen our roster. You didn't need the roster slot. AZ didn't free up an international
Right.
slot. So the notion that you're sending AZ to free up a roster slot or some way to structurally fit Hartel in the St. Louis roster, that's not there. That's not what this is. This to me is the first piece of the puzzle in bringing Hartel and Columbus agreeing, yeah, we're okay selling you discovery rights now, 350. We'll pay you $650 for AZ, 2 buckets of $325,000 in GAM. and so not intrinsically related, but it's 1A and then 1B type of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I just view. I know I sounded like the bad guy there. I just wanted to kind of present the bad part so we could kind of discuss that. But I do think that if you were to just continue a little bit of the potential bad for Carnell, is that he is the one in power and he is the one that gets to decide, hey, this guy's not working out. Can you please help me, Lutz, find places for them and find me replacement players? And all we can do as fans is, like, we don't know if there's been maybe there's been evidence here and there, but we don't know how much drama has happened in the past with City, and we don't know what kind of fires Bradley Carnell has put out, because it's like no press can be good and bad, right? Like, if there was negative press because a player was falling out of line, but then they figured it out, in the long run, the PR for that story would be quite good. In the moment, the PR for that story is something they don't want out at all. But we have no evidence of Bradley Carnell having a player be a bad locker room presence and then having him bring him back in. We have two players with potential evidence of being bad locker room guys and being sent away. And we have three, like I said, three left backs and a winger that have left because different reasons, right? You guys can decide. So those happened, and we can't ignore them, and all we have a choice to do is to translate those how we will as fans. And so I have faith in Bradley Carnell. I enjoy his coaching. I think he's on the right track. I think the track we're on is going to take some time, and I want to give him that time. I absolutely do not want to be that team that puts a coach on the hot seat without giving them a chance to right problems. And sometimes that takes more than a season. So, give him another year, give him another year and a half, even two, to try to get this possession style going. But I will say that if we continue to lose players, or if we continue to not be able to rally players to the cause, that could become, repeated evidence that Bradley Carnell may not be able to flip players into useful players, and that's not something we can afford. We can't afford to continue to lose players. And so that's it on Bradley Carnell. Is I'm all on board. I think he's doing great. No complaints, but there are these like red flags, right? Or orange flags, whatever you want to call them. They're not green flags, folks. So I just want to say that like, please have faith in Carnell. I do, but keep these in the back of your mind, because if they continue to happen, there might be a problem here. And I do want to finish with saying, I've been wanting to say this for a while, that my goodness, Lutz has done a good job maneuvering based on what has been needed, and perhaps is what has been asked for from Carnell. The fact that we got rid of Dewar for the same price or a little more than we bought him for is very good work. My goodness.
Yeah, I do think that Carnell has some things worth scrutinizing. We've all criticized his tactical subs, timings.
But just potentially, though. You know what I mean? I don't want anyone to leave
first head
here
coaching
being like,
position.
Phil says he's messing up. No, it's just like, maybe he's messing up. Maybe he's not.
Yeah, he's only in his second year as a full-time head coach. He's using St. Louis to grow himself as well and learn, and we're as much of a project for Carnell as we're Lutz's project. You have to look at it that way as well.
Yeah.
Before we go, because we're super long, there was a question. There was a question on X. Ideal starting 11 post Leagues Cup if everyone's healthy. And now that we've gotten Teukert, we have Girdwood Reich, and we have Hartel coming in. I'll start us off because I want to give you guys the time to think about this.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
We're doing it, and I think it's fairly obvious right now. I think it's a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-2-2-2, depending on where you put Cedric Teukert. But I think the answer is you have right now, where our roster is right now, you have either Anthony Marcanic or Kyle Hebert at left back. I flip-flop those two, and I legitimately could interchange them because I think both bring quality at that position. Not the level of quality that I ultimately want to see us at left back, but that's where we are. Joachim Nilsson and Tim Parker at center back, Thomas Totland right back. It's Chris Durkin and Edu Leuven in the central midfield. And then the attack is on the left side, probably Cedric Teuchert. It's Marcel Hartel in the middle. It's, I would say, Indiana Vassilev on the right, and then Klaus up top. I could also make an argument for Rasmus Alm on the right, though I think the way that this could play out benefits how Indy could invert and work with the others. But I think that's our ideal 11. We have depth of the names like one of Almer, Indiana Vassilev. You have Nufi Thorson still around. You have Jabulu Blom in the midfield, like key name. These are key backups here. We still have depth issues, and that's where we are right now because of the loss of Salio and Ostrak, but that's where I am.
Santi?
It will be similar to Matt's lineup, but I will insert Akil Watts in the left back conversation. He has done well the last.
That's fair. That's really fair.
2-3 games, and he keeps growing in that position. So I think he will be in the mix. But yeah, all the other ones, I agree, and I think, and we have talked about this on this podcast before. The debate about should Edo Leuven play as a number 10 is over, and now with the pieces the team is bringing, that question won't be there anymore.
Yes,
yeah,
amen.
I'm with you on the Watts thing, and I feel like Hebert should only be a stopgap. That's just my opinion. I understand where you're coming from, Matt, but I think Hebert's a stopgap at left back until we find a permanent backup. And maybe Watts is that. That's fine. I think Hebert and Watts are going to be like A and B backups, in my opinion.
What if Watts ends up being the left back equivalent of what Salio has been for left mid?
Could be.
You mean he takes the position and runs with it?
Yeah, I mean this
over Marcanic.
Maybe we've started to see a progression, a comfortability on the left side more and more. It wasn't his natural position that he came in to do. Right-footed center defensive mid who was projected and transitioned to a right back at the MLS level, and now he's the other fullback. I mean, there's a learning curve on the left side, sure, but I think Akil with his speed and his on the ball play is so talented and offers so much. If he could figure out how to deliver service from the left side consistently, I think that's so much.
Oh, I think he'll be fine there. I would just put it like this. I would say you want attack and defense, you put Marcanic in every time. And I do think he's the starter. If you need an offensive sub, you put in Watts. If you're worried about shutting down the left side for any reason, you put in Hebert. Usually as a sub, but perhaps as a starter here and there. That's how I would roll with it going forward. And I think that is perfect to push into what would I do for this lineup. And post Leagues Cup, great question, fun question. Teuchert, I've been working on my guttural Teuchert. I think just look at how Gioacchini was used, because he plays the same positions. He won't play it the same way, but he plays the same positions.
Yeah.
And I think Lutz and Carnell absolutely understand each other. I think Lutz found him another Gioacchini that lets him do whatever he wants on any given Saturday. And so that means you either get Matt's 4-2-3-1 or 4-2-2-2. Absolutely. Those are both wonderful options. Maybe Teuchert comes in as a sub like Gioacchini did quite often at the end of last season. Maybe we run a 4-4-2, right? Where Teuchert and Klaus are just running at people in the press. It just so many options. And so I just think it gives Bradley Carnell flexibility that he enjoys and loves without having to change the system wholesale like we saw Wednesday, right? It's just like throwing two strikers up, but keeping everyone in the same basic, formation it's really useful. You don't have to change your thinking. People are still making similar runs, making similar movements, just depending on who's in there. It's easy for players to mentally change that while still implementing the system that's being given by Carnell. So yeah, I think we see Hartel start practically every game. I think we see Klaus start practically every game, and I think we see Leuven start practically every game.
Yeah.
And they may change their positions by a half, right? Like if one plays a left mid position, he's going to fold in and look more like a 10. If one plays as a striker or a removed striker, he's still going to push up in that final third and do striker things as we get into the box. As Leuven is in, it doesn't matter where you put him. He's going to look to go wide and cross it toward the middle, no matter where he's played. So, yeah, we can get really crazy with rigidity and where they're going to be on the field, but I think Carnell is going to be able to use them in different ways and still have them do what they do best, no matter what. So,
and the key to Klaus staying in the box is Marcel Hartel. That's the absolute key to me.
And please, God, right? This is what we want. Like, put Klaus back at the top. Give him the freedom to focus on finishing, pressing, getting the ball, turning it over, passing it, or finishing. Like, just keep him up there and doing what he's used to doing. Stop making him play make for everybody. Poor guy. He's good at it, but it's not what he's here to do. It's not what he was born to do.
Bingo.
All right. I've had too much wine. I'm talking too much. That's a good way to stop. Is that okay with you guys?
We on our live stream, we've hit the 2-hour mark that we've been doing this.
Oh,
so who knows how long
wow.
the pod's going to be.
I threw it out the window. Tonight's one of those nights, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you found some positivity and some challenging thoughts that can help us be critical thinkers going forward. Most of all, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Enjoy the game on Saturday. I hope it's a good one for everyone. Good night.